It's been a while, Ben. Morning.
Good morning, Christo. Very good to see you again. It has been a while.
You've missed me. I know you have.
I have missed you.
I know.
I have missed you.
You're only human, Ben. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice to see EU, though, is it? Because let's start with that story, because apparently Keir Starmer has been talking to the EU, specifically talking to the Spanish Prime Minister about the possibility of a youth mobility scheme. Apparently, the proposal has been discussed in a private meeting during the European Political Community Summit at Blenheim Palace earlier this month. Starmer didn't reject the idea and told Pedro Sanchez that he would consider some sort of youth mobility scheme. Youth mobility scheme sounds a little bit like free movement, doesn't it? But in a sort of dressed up way. But would this be a way of younger people who perhaps aren't in favour of Brexit sort of being able to have their cake and eat it a little bit? You know, we can go and work there, they can work here, but actually it isn't full free movement. What do you think?
Well, the first comment I have is that the government put out a publication this morning, an announcement, including accusing the Tories of having lost control of their borders. But if their answer to reclaiming border control is actually to provide freedom of movement for young people, it simply doesn't make any sense. You know, one of the biggest problems we've got in terms of border control in this country is because EU member states effectively don't have borders anymore because of the Schengen zone. So I can't see how it's a positive step in enforcing your borders and maintaining and protecting or reclaiming your territorial integrity that you would institute a scheme, even if it's only for the youth, that takes you in the opposite direction. It simply doesn't make any sense.
Would you be in favour of it being... Because we already have a youth mobility scheme with about 13 other countries, but the difference to it being similar to freedom of movement is that you need visas, and you also need evidence of sufficient funds to support yourself, and you need to pay a health service surcharge. So that's the youth mobility scheme that we have with other countries. If it was that sort of scheme, you'd be okay with that?
That makes sense. Absolutely, because you've got control. You can decline to issue a visa, or you can decide to issue a visa, and they're not, causing a burden on your public services because they've got to pay up for those. And those are critical things associated with protecting our country from being, used effectively. And, one of the big arguments I've been making for the last 3-4 years, maybe longer than that, is that the nation state that is the United Kingdom, our society, our territorial integrity, our borders, all of them have been under assault. And you've got to have controls on people coming into your country. You've got to have controls on what they do while they're in your country, and you've got to prevent them from taking your country for a ride. All this sort of health tourism, coming here for cheap operations, dental treatment on the NHS, illegal migrants being put up in hotels. Rachel Reeves in the announcement this morning talks about the £20 billion deficit that the country is facing. Well, we spent £7 billion last year on housing illegal migrants, sort the illegal migrant issue out, and in fact, you're going to save 35% of the so-called hole that you've identified. These people are slightly all over the place, aren't they, Christo? There's no joined-up thinking.
I mean, look, I just believe that this, and I don't believe that this is sort of which is normally bandied around, sort of a far-right position. I just don't think that we have the infrastructure to cope with the number of people who are here. To me, it's just a simple maths issue. And actually, I understand completely the frustration regarding the amount of money that is spent housing people that haven't been processed. However, that is a minuscule number in comparison to those people who are allowed to legally come here, which is not sustainable. And I understand that we have had an economic benefit to immigration here in the United Kingdom. But that economic benefit, as the Resolution Foundation found, has not actually worked its way down to those people who are socio-economically less well off. And actually, although the economy has grown as a result of the numbers of people coming here, those people who probably need the infrastructure the most at the bottom of society, for want of a better word, haven't seen those benefits. And at some point, we're 4 million behind when it comes to the number of houses that need to be built. So where I agreed with reform, I didn't always agree with some of the rhetoric that was coming from reform, and I've always been honest with you about that. But where I agreed with reform was that I completely understood them saying, look, we need to think about who we need, when we need them, and what infrastructure we have for the people that are here already. People who are here, by the way, who may have come from umpteen other countries. The people who are here that might be immigrants themselves who are working. We're also letting them down by not having the infrastructure for them. And so for me, that seems to make mathematical sense more than anything else.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's some very fundamental ground rules to which the country should have adhered and should immediately adhere now. And the first is that no one should be given a visa or a right to settle in the United Kingdom for any duration unless they are earning a minimum wage, which is significantly above the minimum wage. Sorry, the minimum wage required to be entitled to a working visa to have a right to work in this country should be at a level which is significantly above the median wage in this country, so that you're only getting seriously, people who can make a serious contribution to the economy. There should also be a bar to evidence that you can't recruit people from this country into those jobs before you take anyone from abroad. There should be a tax, as Reform UK proposed, on taking foreigners over domestic workforce. And if you can put all of that together, you will dramatically reduce immigration. And actually what we need to be doing is heading really to almost bringing the shutters down on immigration at the moment, Christo, while the country comes to terms with what we've already got in the country.
I mean, respectfully, I'm not sure that that's practical, and I'll tell you why I don't think that is. And I don't disagree with the principle of needing to do that. First, I don't think anyone's got the bottle to do what is required for that. I think that you could eventually bring it down, but I think what you'd have to say, what anyone in government would have to say is, look, we are going to start a training programme that is absolutely fundamental, and it's going to take 3 years to train, but we're going to give scholarships for people who want to be nurses. We're going to give scholarships for people who want to be doctors. We're going to have a fundamental change to our education system so that those people who want to have technical skills, who want to be builders, who want to be tradies, want to be carpenters.
Bring the polytechnics back.
Bring the polytechnics back. And then so in 3 years' time, over the course of the next 3 years, that's the time, 3 or 4 years, we're going to train those people so that then in 3 or 4 years' time, that's when we can start to phase down bringing those people in from abroad as the people who we've trained here start to be able to be ready to be into the workplace. So we would do that. We'd have to fundamentally change the benefit system to make it actually more prudent to be able to work rather than have benefits, because at the moment you've got this absurd system where people who want to work can't do more than a certain amount of hours because they get less money. You would need to have a fundamental change as well to obviously the Home Office and the way in which people are processed. So it's actually a change that would take, I think, about 4 or 5 years before you started seeing the benefits. Well, and also you'd need a government that has got the balls, for want of a better word, to say, right, these are all the different departments that are involved in it, and I don't think we've got that.
Well, I think you can do it faster than that. I mean, I think for a start you can just say anyone coming to work in the United Kingdom is not bringing their spouses, their families, their dependents with them. Anyone coming to study here, similarly, is not going to bring any family members with them. They want to come here for a purpose, fulfill your purpose and go home. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that you absolutely immediately we need to significantly raise the hurdle for salaries at which people are granted a visa. Absolutely. We've got to provide unskilled labour from within the United Kingdom, not from without. All we're doing is bringing in people who aren't contributing much to the economy, undermining wages in this country, and going on our benefit system to some extent or another. That's got to stop, and that can happen immediately. The other thing we've got to do immediately, as you rightly say, and the thrust of it can come in a number of different ways, is reduce benefits. We've got to reduce benefits. We've got 3 million people who are on benefits, not even looking for a job at the moment. And they've been in this state for the last 3 or 4 years. That is unacceptable. And we've got to reduce taxes on the working and middle classes.
That's a part of it.
That is critical. We've got to reduce taxes on them.
So it would involve, in order for this to actually be solved, it would involve the Department for Work and Pensions. It would involve the Treasury when it comes to taxes. It would involve the Department for Education when it comes to training people. And that is actually what would, and it would probably long term before you started seeing benefits. I mean, I understand what you're saying. You could think we could do it quicker. It would take a few years, but it's taken many years for us to get to this position where we've been dependent on the kind of labour that we've got to get here. So I think it would take a long time to unpick.
But Christo, they've thrown open the doors in the last 2 or 3 years. This, 1.3 million people coming to the UK each year. That's not a long-term thing. This has just happened in the last 3 or 4 years. This is the government absolutely throwing open the borders, and there's no sense that they want to reclaim our borders.
I agree. It's not going to sort out. And can I just tell you something really quickly before you go? So a week before last, I mentioned this last week. I went to the beauty salon, Ben, and I know you're interested when I do that. And I met a lovely lady, right? And while she was preening me, and it was so absurd that she's a single mum, right? The dad is around, but single mum, and rather than waiting for her daughter to be of an age, she took loans and she put herself through training as becoming a beautician, right? She's lived in the UK all her life, and her daughter is in school, and she does, I think, 20 or 22 hours or something in the beauty salon. They are desperate for her to do more hours. She is desperate to do more hours, but because she'd have to pay for childcare, she would end up worse off. She wants to work harder, and she can't. And it was so perverse to me that she would, and she's on the brink at the moment. She doesn't have disposable income. Every penny she has every month she spends, but she's precisely the kind of person who's got the kind of drive that we should be incentivising. And
our tax system is putting it out of business.
Her tax system and the benefit system means that she would actually be worse off if she were to say to the salon, actually, I will work more hours, I want to work more hours. So it's more prudent for her to do fewer hours, which is so perverse.
It's absurd. And the other thing I just want to quickly mention while we're on it, again, this statement put out by the government this morning talked about how costs were through the roof and energy costs need to be brought down. They were referencing the agricultural sector. Well, if you want to bring energy costs down, what you don't do is go for this net zero nutcase drive for 2050. What you do is you exploit the North Sea gas that we've got in massive abundance. You use it. You can build all your windmills if you're obsessed with building windmills, but don't do it don't switch off the North Sea until your windmills are all built.
Again, that's a 20-year plan. Again, that's a 20 or 30-year plan. You can't do that in a couple of years. You can't.
So keep doing North Sea gas. Keep using North Sea gas until we're in a position.
Just a very final...
impoverish the British people.
Quick word, Ben. Do you believe them when they say they didn't know about this 20 billion black hole?
No, I don't believe them at all, and I don't think they know what the black hole is. There's no such thing as a black hole. You have an amount of money. You can decide to spend it in various different ways. If you choose to have open borders and spend $7 billion a year on illegal migrants, well, that's a positive choice by the government. If you choose to give $5 billion a year to the Ukrainian war effort, well, that's a choice by the government. If you choose to shut down taxes that you would get from the North Sea because you want to stop any extraction of gas for ideological reasons, well, that's a choice the government's making. You could reverse all these issues. You could save $30 billion a year by telling the Bank of England not to be paying banks interest on cash reserves that were created rescuing the banks in the first place. There's more than enough money around to liberate the United Kingdom.
There's no joined up thinking, and also there's no thinking that goes beyond the next election cycle. This is why we need dictatorships, Ben. You know, this is why we need dictatorships. At least in dictatorships, they have 30-year plans. I mean, you know, they might not be pleasant for other reasons, but at least they've got 30-year plans. Ben Habib, I could put the world to rights with you. We don't agree on everything, but I really enjoy sparring with you. That's Ben Habib, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK.